Hello everyone, welcome back to Tabletop and Hobby Stop. Today we are going to be elevating our MDF terrain from looking something like this to something like this in 5 easy and affordable steps. Most of this can be done using trash and craft supplies you probably already have in your toolbox. The goal today is to stick under about $5 for the entire set. So let's see how I do and let's get into it. So I actually picked up one of these buildings from my local game shop, and I liked it so much I went on the site and found that they had a whole bunch of them. But I kept one to go through on this video. And what we want to do, step one, we want to lay everything out and dry fit it. We want to plan out our miniature steps, and this is going to help us in the long run to keep it looking nice and crisp. So one big thing I found when we're doing these MDF buildings is I put a few of these together and they always had these really dark sides whenever you butt the two things together from the cutting lines. So what we want to do to handle those sides is we're going to pull out a sanding pad. Now this is a 220 grit sanding pad, and we're just going to take along the sides and we're going to sand that right off. And that's going to give us a nice fresh area for when we do our later steps. It's going to look more organic, and that's the key to making these MDF buildings look good, especially when you have these organic shaped MDF buildings. It's not as bad when you're in a city set, but if you have a fantasy set, if you have a wilderness set or certain sci-fi sets, a lot of them are thrown off by how boxy they look. So you can see right here just how much better that looks already, having only taken a couple seconds to sand the sides. And you can get a sanding pad, an emery board. You can get these from the dollar store for literally $1. And you can see the difference here of what I'm talking about. That bright black line just always drove me nuts. So by taking a little bit of time beforehand to sand it off, we're going to save a lot of time later on. Now, gluing it together, I'm using my fingers here so I don't ruin a brush. But what we're going to do is we're actually only going to glue the parts that go together. So I'm not even going to glue this to the base yet because it's going to make painting it more difficult. And I did the roof here, but I didn't even attach that top part, so that all comes apart, and you'll see that later on. Now, in my opinion, step 2 has the biggest impact. So we're going to try and create some organic shapes, and we're just going to use trash for this. I used mostly those hot Cheez-It things, and we're going to cut them into strips. This is for the roofing shingles. We're going to cut them into strips between 3/4 of an inch and an inch. It's a time-consuming process, but boy, was this the difference make when I was doing these buildings. Then from here, we're going to go about 1/4 inch, and I'm just eyeballing it. And then time saver tip here, we're going to turn it on its side to get these organic shapes, and we're going to just cut the second shingle. That's going to save you a ton of time, because to start I was cutting every shingle, but you don't have to. It looks great in the end product just cutting every second shingle. Then we lay it out. I found you need about 7 to 9 of these strips. Depending on how long you make them, you could get away with 6, but I think 7 to 9 is the sweet spot. And you're just going to lay them out, and then you're going to pull out some more of that wood glue we're using in the project, and you're just going to slather it all over the roof. You're just going to tack all of the shingle tiles on there. I know they sell shingles by the strips elsewhere, but with how cheap this is literally free. You can do it with cereal boxes. You can do it with basically any card cut that they get you. And I'm using so little glue, it's almost not even worth counting it. You could use Elmer's glue for this, whatever glue you have laying around. So there's only a couple bucks investment right there. Now, when I'm laying these out, I'm going to try to lay them to where the shingles do not line up. And that's really the only consideration I have for how I'm laying these out. And then I'm pressing them into the glue. And then when I get to the top, I'm actually going to line that top shingle up with the top edge of the roof. Then we're going to grab our scissors, and I did this while it was still wet. I'm going to line the flat side of my scissors up with the roof, and I'm going to use that to cut these strips off, and we'll use these strips for the other side. So once again, laying things out, I think, is a huge time saver. We can see that I'm going to need about a strip. I'm actually going to go with 2 on the top and 1 strip on the bottom. I'm going to lay out my glue once again, but I'm going to be careful just to stay out of the area where that little cove on the top is going to be, so that I'm not gunking up the connection hole there. And then same as the last time, we're just going to stick it on, except this time I'm going to rip off the extra right away. And that still fits. I didn't feel the need to do another line of shingles just because it lines up perfectly fine and it looks great. Now, binder clips will actually help you in the long run with this process. My glue was a little bit thicker, so I didn't need it. But binder clips will help keep this down while it's drying. And if you buy the full set of these, you just go roof by roof and binder clip it down, and then by the time you finish up maybe your second or third roof, the first one's already good to go. And then once again, take the scissors, align right with the roof, and cut off the extra. Don't worry if you have short shingles. These are supposed to look like rough hewn shingles anyways. Since we're going with this fairy tale theme, that was the look that I wanted. We're going to do it for this little side building as well. And this is all done with the offcuts. So I don't throw away my offcuts just because they're so useful and it saves you a ton of time. And I even went a little bit over the top here, so I just took the scissors and cut off the extra there, just to save myself some time, because I didn't feel like cutting up a whole new strip for this guy. Another thing that you can do with the roof, I actually discuss it in the end, but I'll make a mention here just to give a little bit more detail, is teddy bear fur. So I went to Hobby Lobby. I found some teddy bear fur on sale. I got an 8-inch strip, and I think it cost me $2 total, and I probably could have done all of the roofs in this set with that $2 to $3 worth of teddy bear fur. So maybe painting is a little bit of a cheaty step, but I do think that it is necessary to keep your MDF buildings looking good. I think raw MDF buildings a lot of times can pull away from the game. Now, granted, you could put tissue boxes on the table and it's totally fine if that's what your group likes, and I'm not going to knock you for a second for it, because I think that it's totally fine as well. But with these apple barrel paints, you can actually get some small ones for about 50 cents a piece, and with just a couple of colors, maybe white, black, red, green, blue, do the primary colors. This is a really, really cheap way to paint your MDF terrain, and I'm actually going to water all of my paints down, and I'm going to do, if you water it down too much, you may need to do 2 or 3 coats, but for this building, I do 2 coats. For the windowsills, that white, I actually ended up doing probably 3 coats because I thinned it down way too much. But I wanted a rugged look to my buildings, and this, as it dried, really showed out. And then for the For the roof, I actually do the black straight out of the pot, as well as whatever your roof color is, but I would say base coat in black, and then you're going to do almost a blending or a dry brushing overbrush while it's still wet, and you're going to find that you're going to get these really cool streaks on the rooftop as you're painting it. You'll see that in a moment, but make sure you catch all of the underside so that nothing shows through on the game table. But then we're going to get this purple, we're going to mix that into our frills so we get this dark purple, and then we're going to keep on dabbing and getting a light purple on top, and we're using this chunky worn out brush so that it gets these nice streaks, because the bristles are so kind of frayed that you get these really cool streaking effects that almost looks like wood, and it adds a lot of character to the painting process. Now, another thing you can do for the roof is actually going to be teddy bear fur. I discuss it later on, but I wanted to say that I picked up an 8-inch strip of teddy bear fur, and that is enough probably to do all of these buildings, and it cost me $2 or $3, and then from there you just need some PVA glue, and then you mix that with water, get it nice and thin down, PVA glue. You cut it out onto the roof, glue it, and then brush it in the direction that you want, and it looks very, very nice. You'll actually be able to see it on a couple of my different buildings. Once we get that far, we can glue all of these guys together, because when we base it, we're going to want them together so that everything looks cohesive when I add the basing material on. I am going to do some white accents, and the reason I do white accents is to brighten everything up so it doesn't just look super washed, because whenever we're doing mini painting, we want to hint at what's going on. We don't want to give a true representation, right? So right here I'm doing white, and you see I'm doing almost a heavy overbrush, leaving a lot of the wood there. Step 4, this one's actually going to go a long ways. Now, there's a lot of basing techniques. Right here, you could use tea, you could use some gravel, you could use, this is a gravel rock mix that I made. I thought about going with that. And then you have flocking, all of this stuff. But for this one, I actually had a pot of ground texture that was drying out. So I added a little bit of water, and this is what we're going to use to base the buildings. Now you can make your own ground texture using some Elmer's glue, water, some paint, and some gravel, and it turns out really, really well. This stuff is called wet ground because I kind of wanted a garden-like dirty look to these buildings, and the ledges are small enough where I'm not worried about it overtaking any of my mats. But just slather that all over. I'm not worrying about the inside of my buildings. The inside of my buildings hardly ever get any play. You can do all of these steps to the inside of the building as well. You can paint the inside of the building. Like you could have a red floor, you could have a gray floor. If you wanted to utilize the cobblestones, you could paint each individual cobblestone, and it actually does look good. I did do a test piece on a different piece of MDF terrain I had. And then right here, to add even more organic interest, I am going to just add some different colored rocks. Normally I would strive to stay within the bounds color wise, because the rock should come from the ground. But this is a fairyland, so I almost wanted the rocks to stand out and be a little bit on the cartoony side. This is an intentional choice. I would advise, if you guys want a more realistic look, to kind of blend the rock color into whatever ground texture you have going on. And once your rocks are complete, we're actually going to move on to flocking. or not flocking, but grass tufts. You could do flocking, but for me, I'm going to use these TT Combat. I have yellow flowers. I have 2 different color grass tufts, but I'm using bright colors once again because I want that cartoony look in my grass. This is supposed to be like fairyland. And then I have some pink flowers as well. And you can use as much or as little of these as you want. I had considered just going all around the base and just loading it up with grass tufts. But as I was doing this, I actually found that I liked the smaller amount of grass tufts more. I liked the more sparse look because it kept it looking organic. And these yellow flowers, a lot of the yellow flowers were falling off. Not a big deal. Sometimes I just took some super glue and I just sprinkled some of the yellow flowers back on. But these pink ones worked very, very nicely. And that, I think, is one of the things that tied this whole set together very well. And for step 5, this is actually a really, really easy step. It doesn't require any crafting. I literally went to Walmart, found some of these flickering LED faux candles, and I was curious. I actually tore a couple of them apart to try to do these super elaborate effects. But then my wife just said, stick them in the building, and I did so. I just set it right in the building, and I thought that it looked really, really well. I was experimenting doing some aluminum foil on the roofs. I was experimenting doing some like frosted glass and all of that. But it turns out that just turning them on and sticking them in there was probably the easiest, fastest, and cheapest low hassle way to do this, and it looks great. I never really use the inside of my buildings during my campaigns or during any tabletop combat that I'm doing, very rarely at least. So this works out perfect for my needs. Now there's different things that you can do. Like if you take one of these, you break it down, you drill a hole through the chimney, through the roof where the chimney is. You can actually do some flame effects out of the chimney, or some smoke effects using some cotton, holding it out of the chimney. Now these need to be stored for me, so I'm not going to do those. But I also found this LED strip. If you're looking to do sci-fi or moderns, you can find these at Michael's, but these are another good option. And there we have it, guys. 5 easy and affordable steps to elevate your MDF terrain. Below in the description, I have listed where you can get these guys, and I think they're fantastic buildings. This wasn't a review of the Lasercraft systems. However, I do really, really like the organic shapes of these buildings, so I will definitely be using these guys. This barn is probably one of my favorites. I will be using these guys in my game. I have a game that I'd like to play with my wife, which is the reason I picked these up. It's kind of a fairy tale theme, and that's why I was going with these buildings, these brighter, almost grim fairy tale style. This grim fairy tale style. Now, the one thing I did not get to in this video because I could not find my teddy bear fur before we go over to the shots. At the end, if you guys want to skip forward, I always do the timestamp, so you can go ahead and skip right over to the shots. But this kind of thatch looking roof, this is actually achieved with teddy bear fur. So I went to, I believe it was Hobby Lobby. They had a sale, and I picked up an 8-inch strip of teddy bear fur, and that's I've got enough to do. I could have probably done most of these roofs based off of that, and all you have to do for that is you lay it over, you do the glue all around, pat it down, and then I soaked this fur in a pretty thin mix of PVA glue and water, and then I just let it dry. I did hit it with the blow dryer, and that's that. Now, I did a few finishing steps with the paint, like on the chimneys. I did do some additional black dry brushing. I'm pretty sure I mentioned that in the voiceover. I did try with this guy, I wanted to do almost like some moss on the roof. I don't think it turned out very well. It's okay enough to keep it for this guy for my purposes, but maybe I would do a wash on these guys, but I don't think that this looks very good. I think there needs to be something to bring it together, but I still want the brighter roof, so I don't know if I'm going to go ahead and do that. A couple of other things that I might consider using. I actually have my clump foliage sitting right beside me. I strongly considered using clump foliage on these guys. However, I did really like the more subtle look of just having the flowers. A few other tips of the trade for this is, if you are doing a modern building and you want windows, you could grab some clear plastic from the Grass Tufts. They come with that. Or if you buy action figures for your son, a lot of times they have clear plastic packaging that those come in, which works even better because it's nice and bright, shiny, clear. Or if you're doing these more medieval style buildings and you want some more unique looking glass, you could do stained glass using some dyes and some UV resin. We'll head right on over and grab those glory shots for you guys.